Coming up, we meet a content creator using TikTok as a platform to uplift Indigenous voices. Plus, residents in the Bay Area can now dine at Wapapa's Kitchen. We'll show you the new Indigenous restaurant that's open for business. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from Indian country today.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is Indian Country Today.
Ku'watsi Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. In Maine, a ski resort is removing a derogatory term for Indigenous women from its name. This comes 2 decades after a state law eliminated the S word from names of communities and public landmarks. The offensive word had carried on at the ski resort because it's a privately owned business. Now investors that are buying the mountain resort took a vow to retire the name once they purchased the business, according to the Portland Press Herald. The new name of the resort will instead be called Big Moose Mountain. The move to change Native mascots is taking place in the U.S. and even across the ocean in the United Kingdom. Members of the Exeter Chiefs agreed overwhelmingly last week to stop using its mascot that features a Native American headdress. The rugby team is located in Exeter, a town in the southwestern part of the UK. While they will no longer use the mascot, the team is still deciding on whether to change its name. Some people want to keep the name Chiefs and make it refer to the Demini tribe. They lived in the Devon and Cornwall area until the early Saxon period. Team officials say they will talk to experts to learn more about the Demini people and their history to do them justice. Instead of turkey and gravy, Indigenous people and allies once again occupied Alcatraz Island for the 43rd annual Sunrise Gathering. Participants say it proves that 400 years later, Native people have not vanished. ICT's Deputy Managing Editor, Dalton Walker, reports.
In the early morning, Indigenous people walked off the ferry and onto Alcatraz Island. They gathered on the lands of the Yelamu and Ohlone people for a day of solidarity. This gathering has been the norm for the Bay Area Native community for decades. It is held on the federal holiday known as Thanksgiving. While millions of people in the U.S. commemorate the day with a baked bird and the fixings, Native people gather on the rock for prayer, dancing, singing, and community. One of the featured guests this year was Lakota citizen Arvo Looking Horse. He is the 19th keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe and bundle. Organizer Morningstar Galley says it was beautiful to welcome people from all over Turtle Island.
We continue on those prayers that were made over 40 years ago here on this island, those prayers that were made over 50 years ago during the occupation of Alcatraz by Indians of all tribes. We are here today to honor all of our warriors. We are here today in solidarity, in resistance, for our continued healing of our communities. So we come together to offer that prayer with over 5,000 people in attendance. But it was a really beautiful gathering, and we look forward to being able to host again next year.
This year, the participants discussed issues such as mercury contamination, oil pipelines, and the Indian boarding school era. Thursday's Sunrise Gathering also commemorated the historic occupation of Alcatraz in 1969. 1 week earlier, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland visited the island. She acknowledged a time when Native people took over Alcatraz and occupied the former federal prison for 19 months. One Sunrise participant says that having a ceremony on this day may help undo some of the lies associated with the holiday.
People want to think about us that we're just in history books, that we are no longer here. So by being here, different nations, different tribes, we are showing presence. What you just saw, Danza Azteca, is a pre-colonial prayer movement. That was practiced by our indigenous people of the Anahuac, which is what we wrongfully call Mexico. There's many tribes, here before colonization. So we just here saying that after 535 years, we are still here as indigenous people.
On Alcatraz Island, Dalton Walker, Indian Country Today.
Marvel is getting ready to release its comic heritage that showcases Indigenous heroes. Native people are underrepresented in the comic world, but Marvel's Voices series is setting out to change that. The one-shot comic spotlights some of Marvel's greatest Indigenous superheroes. American Indian and First Nations artists and writers are coming together to tell stories about Indigenous characters of the past, present, and future. And one of those artists is Navajo citizen Sean Bailey, who is making his Marvel comic debut drawing River, a new Indigenous hero. Bailey hopes to release his own native superhero comic to show the beauty of his culture. Marvel's Voices Heritage #1 is set to be released on January 12th of next year. And those are the headlines for Indian Country Today. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Coming up, Wapapa's Kitchen just opened in Oakland, California. We'll tell you why it's serving more than just Indigenous foods. But first, a conversation with Geronimo Louie and his journey to creating content on TikTok. Geronimo Louie has amassed more than 162,000 followers on the social media platform TikTok. He is a Chiricahua Apache and Dene content creator. Posting videos of his Two-Spirit and Indigenous identity, Geronimo is now using his platform as a way to uplift Indigenous voices. He is also a fashion designer and a youth director for Dene Pride, something he also posts about. Let's take a look.
June, July, August, September. This one is...
Geronimo joins us now to tell us about his TikTok journey. Hi, Geronimo.
Hi, Yate.
So tell us about your TikTok journey. When did you first start posting videos?
I think I started first posting videos on TikTok in 2019, I'd like to say. And it was like, it really started off during the pandemic because like we're all home. And so, yeah, that's basically where it started.
And tell us about, I know you've had some viral videos, as you mentioned. The pandemic, I feel like, really spotlighted TikTok in a way that now it's used by people every single day. But tell us about your very first viral video.
I think my very first viral video, I think it would have to like be the third video that I made. And it was just basically like me transforming into my traditional clothes. And yeah, that's like basically like where it all began. Like a lot of people enjoyed the kind of content I created and stuff. And, you know, it just kind of went on from there.
TikTok has really become a community. That's what a lot of people use to describe it, a community to find diverse people from diverse backgrounds. Has this been the case for you?
Absolutely. I have been in touch with so many different indigenous tribes and people across the world, from Mexico to Canada to the Amazons and even Hawaii. And I've learned so many things from different tribes and different clans and different bands of indigenous peoples. And it brings us together as like indigenous peoples. And I'm in love with our community so much.
One of the platforms that you speak about is your identity being Two-Spirit. Tell us about your recent collaboration with Target and also why it's important for you to speak up about this.
Yeah, Target had reached out to me and asked me to um, promote some of their LGBTQ stories, books, and authors that they were celebrating in in terms of what is it called, Spirit Day and National Coming Out Day. And so I was like, yeah, like I was on board. As a youth pride director, it was something that was in line with me. And they're like, yeah, like we have some POCs, authors, characters, and stories like that. And that's where it was for me. And one of my favorite books that I got to promote was called Hunani Hula Warrior. And I was so happy to have they had that story because it's a story about another indigenous Hawaiian girl who also sees herself as a two-spirit individual, and she finds her way throughout like her teachings of hula dancing and stuff like that. And it was just amazing. And it's important to take on those kinds of roles, especially in today's world, because we need better representation of indigenous peoples, and whether that be like off camera, on camera, for commercials, movies, red carpets, I'm here for it.
And when you're talking about that Indigenous representation, I know that sometimes that spans beyond genders, beyond sexualities. There's really a diversity of identities.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us, what has the reaction been to your videos?
It's I mean, it's amazing. Some parts of it are really good. I get a lot of good feedback from other indigenous queer people, other indigenous peoples from different islands and parts of the world, and like we just talk to each other and you know you just appreciate each other's culture and stuff like that, and learn about each other's history as well and our issues that we face as indigenous peoples. And then there are the occasional haters who are like, oh, like you're this and this, or like your history that you're teaching is wrong. And I mean, I'm used to it. That's kind of like the whole ordeal thing that I grew up in. Being that I'm indigenous and a person of color is just something that we go through in this world. But it's made me a lot stronger, and it's made more opportunity for them to learn and me to teach.
Mhm. And I actually want to learn more about how you actually come up with the ideas for your videos. I know that they range from, dancing TikToks to more educational ones. How do you come up with these ideas?
They're basically on the spot sometimes. Like sometimes I just feel like in a happy mood and I want to get, just like embrace that for myself. And I think it's also just it's a beautiful opportunity for other people to like appreciate each other, and that's how I figure it. And so like that will be like my dancing videos or my transformation videos. But as in terms of educational videos, that just comes like in a time where I feel like I have enough resources or I have enough knowledge to talk about something like cultural appropriation, versus cultural appreciation, my people's history, indigenous people's struggles, and so on and so forth.
And I mentioned in the opening that you're a fashion designer. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, I create clothes from, traditional outfits to modern day clothes that can be worn by everybody. And recently on TikTok, I've just been like creating like ribbon skirts and stuff that speak loudly to indigenous peoples all across like indigenous world, I guess you could call it. But yeah, and it's just amazing. I love creating it. And recently I was on Vogue for it, so that was amazing.
Yeah, and did you make the top that you're wearing today?
I did. This is my own top that I made in that video that you all just saw. It's the September one, I believe, or October, each one of them. But this is the from the video, and it's just my favorite outfit, honestly.
That's so wonderful to hear. And yes, we did see a number of videos, a number of outfits in those videos. Tell us more about the Vogue opportunity.
So Christian and Elier had recently reached out to me in March and was like, I love the things that you do. Like, I want to create an article about the ribbon work that you do. I think it's amazing. And he's Ojibwe. And so like it comes from his people. And I was like, yo, like this is so amazing. Like the fact that an Ojibwe person appreciates my work is just amazing. And so he wanted to like really get down to like the grassroots of where it comes from, how I use it in my own traditional clothes, and overall like what it means to me to be a ribbon skirt worker and stuff like that. And you know, it really went off in that sort of manner, and it was amazing. It's probably one of the biggest highlights of my year this year.
When you first started creating videos for TikTok, did you ever imagine that you'd have 162,000 followers?
I honestly didn't think so. I mean, like it was just like when my first viral video went off, I got like 1,000 or something, and then I could go live, and I went live and I talked to a lot of people, and we just really enjoyed each other's company. And that's when I felt like it was a safe space for me to stay and it just engaged for more people. And I always tell people all the time, like my videos aren't for like, you know, the way that I make videos is for educational purposes and like for happiness and stuff. And so I don't make a lot of videos. I just make videos that I would love to watch me over and over again, learn something or appreciate something. So it's like, it's quality over quantity for me. And, you know, I don't really like use hashtags or anything. I don't really promote it as much as other people do on the platform. I want my videos to be genuine and meet genuine people as well.
What advice do you have for Native people who want to dabble into the world of content creation, particularly on TikTok?
I always just encourage people to be themselves and to take this opportunity into the hands of mutual respect for the viewers and yourself as a creator. Make sure you understand like where you are, what you're doing, and how you're speaking to people. Because we as Indigenous peoples have a responsibility as well. And I think, you know, it's important to hold that responsibility and hold yourself accountable to those responsibilities, like bringing awareness to our people, education for our people, and not in the sense of making yourself as a tourist guide, because that's the last thing that I want for myself or anybody Indigenous to be, is like a tourist for somebody to learn about our culture. Like we're more than our culture. We have actual teachings, lives, and issues that need to be resolved in this country in order for us to continue living life in a prosperous way.
Geronimo Louie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
When we come back, we'll learn about a new Indigenous restaurant that's serving people in the Bay Area. There are very few restaurants across the country that feature Indigenous foods, so when Wapapa's Kitchen opened in Oakland, California recently, it was exciting news for the Native people who live there, as well as tourists. ICT's Deputy Managing Editor, Dalton Walker, is fresh from his visit to the Bay Area, and he joins us now to tell us about the new restaurant. Welcome, Dalton.
Bonjour, Aaliyah. Miigwech for having me.
So tell us about this new restaurant.
Well, first, it was really neat to be out and reporting in person again. And this is the type of story I think really needed that because of the obvious food, tasting, the smelling, all that good stuff. So I don't get out often, mostly because of my role, but partly because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And when I do, I want to make the most of it. And that was the plan with my recent trip to the San Francisco Bay Area. I spent part of one of my days with Chef Crystal Wakipa, and it was a delicious experience to say the least. She's an amazing individual, and just beyond her cooking, like just what she has to say is really neat. And it was just kind of a cool deal because she is one of the few Black Indigenous women-owned restaurants out there that kind of focus on Indigenous foods.
And tell us more about Crystal Wapipa herself.
Crystal is Kickapoo, and she was born and raised in Oakland. She's been catering for more than a decade, so she's had her hands in food making for years. And when I was speaking with her, just learning about her background and her own experiences, it seemed like the restaurant idea was kind of her next step. It was a process for her, and I'll be explaining that in a future Indie Country Today digital story. But her just learning the inside and the outside of a business and opening the restaurant. One of the neat things is her network. She knows all these indigenous chefs across Turtle Island, and one example is the sous chef. She went up to Minneapolis recently and got a hands-on experience to see him and his restaurant in person, kind of as a little guide for her, because she just opened. I would probably say less than 3 weeks ago, she opened full time.
I used to live in the Bay Area myself, and what always struck me about Crystal was how involved in the Native community in the Bay Area that she was. Now that her kitchen's opened, did she talk at all about what the reaction has been from the Native community in the Bay Area?
Yeah, you could just feel how positive and this glowing experience there. When I went, it was a Saturday, and before they even opened, there was the line of people waiting. And I kind of thought that was off, but then it was for her restaurant because she's kind of in a little plaza. So I wasn't quite sure what was going on because this was my first time there. But when I noticed that there was at least a half dozen, if not more, people just waiting for her to open doors, I knew this was a pretty big deal. And that experience of chatting with people and just getting to know what was going on, you could tell that it was that, like I said, it was a big deal and people were curious and interested. On this day, there was a little bit more pressure for Crystal, if you will. She was she was cooking. She was cooking. She was getting everything prepared. But there was this one of her friends brought a Kickapoo elder from Oklahoma who was in town for the holiday weekend to come by and taste the goods. You could tell Crystal was a little anxious, but you could tell she was rising to the occasion with her cooking. And she made some good meals and good food. And after she served, she came up to me and she was all smiles and saying they really enjoyed her food. So you could tell right away that people really get this and really enjoy this.
Well, always trying to impress our elders. I know how that goes. So tell us, what did you get to eat?
So the menu is fluid, which is kind of neat. she has a printouts of her menu, and she says because this could change, and she didn't want to have anything like a permanent menu. And I was looking at it and I was like, okay, I want to get one of each. Unfortunately, I couldn't because it was a lot of food, but I basically got what I could, and I felt like I wouldn't waste and I would be able to eat it. So we got some one couple things that jump off is these bison blue corn meatballs and these salmon cakes. Man, they were amazing. They were amazing. They were so delicious. And she also had this waffle. It was just a mind-blowing experience, partly because I was hungry, but partly because it was just really cool to be inside this place and to learn, because I spoke with her before I ate, just to learn this dream she had coming to fruition, and me kind of being a small part of it, but just being there amongst other people who were just enjoying food was pretty neat.
Well, Dalton Walker, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to your upcoming story about Wapapa's Kitchen in Oakland, California. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. For all the latest news and updates, visit us anytime at IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing rock. This is Indian Country Today.